give prompts and assignments to the company to generate material in response to whatever the ideas are or images, research are that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
A prompt is a task, yeah, but it might be that we need to learn about a specific thing. And so, like, the show that the team is going to be premiering this summer at the Edinburgh International Festival started with its roots in the Scottish Enlightenment. And so one of the very first prompts was, okay, everyone pick a philosopher from the Scottish Enlightenment or a accompanying figure, because I actually ended up doing Walter Scott, who was a novelist and writer who actually was deeply regressive and sort of making work in reaction to the kind of revolution that was coming out of the Enlightenment. So it was sort of wide-ranging, but it was, the first assignment was just to basically present a book report on one of these figures. And then later that might evolve into, okay, everyone write a scene in which X happens, or these two characters meet. And sometimes it might be, okay, we're going to do a long-form improv between these two characters. So there's no like specific shape. It's always just about identifying what the problem is or challenge is in a given moment, which could be we need characters, and then structuring an assignment that will try to address that challenge. There's definitely no comparison between a rehearsal process for the team and a rehearsal process for my freelance work. Rehearsal process for me means working on and refining like an agreed upon set of things that are going to happen, which could be the dialogue that's going to get spoken or the staging, storytelling. Whereas with the team, we can't rehearse until we've made the thing. And so actually for a team process, which might be anywhere from a year and a half to typically closer to 3 to 5 years even, most of that process is actually what the hell are we doing? Like just literally what are we making? What's going to happen? Why are we doing it? Who are the people? So the team tends to start with like an overall investigation. Probably the clearest example that I can give is with Mission Drift. We started with me asking the company to think about the question, what defines American capitalism specifically versus capitalism as it's taken shape anywhere else in the world. And very often, because I tend to come at, I find the intellectual quite moving, but many of my company members don't. They are much more gutturally led. And that's actually a very important friction with the team, is how a performer thinks versus how a director or dramaturg thinks. And so I give this question, what defines American capitalism specifically, and then they like roll their eyes back in their head and hate me. And then the work actually begins as they figure out sort of where their emotional stake is. So we spent a huge time for that show doing research, interviewing people. Everyone's researching because everyone's a writer with the team. And it's a truly horizontal writing process, as much as I am the artistic director, and so certainly shaping the day-to-day doings, which a day in a rehearsal process might involve a couple of hours of character-based improv, and then maybe us all sitting around a table like a television writer's room. Might involve someone researching something, might involve us watching a movie or looking at a series of YouTube videos for inspiration. I mean, it can be quite open. Again, back to whatever we feel the piece is lacking on a given day. And that's my job typically, to identify that lack, although, of course, nonstop performers are like, this sucks and this is why it sucks. But on the writing level, my authorial voice does not take precedence over anyone else's authorial voice. And so we try to work in a series of ways that, because some people are much better typing and like going into that writing mode, and some people in the company are just extraordinary at getting up on stage in character and improvising from there. So it really, really, Roosevelt, this show that we made with Libby and Kristen, was made almost entirely through improvisation. So research begins to bleed into generating material, and it's the generative phase that the team spends most of our time in. And of course, we're continuing to research through the generative phase. There's not like a day where it's like, okay, and now we're ready to start making. We start making material ridiculously prematurely, just to begin getting through the obvious stuff. So we generate huge amounts of material, and it's nothing for the team to be able to generate like 500 pages of play in a week. That said, those don't all go together, and they, more importantly, are not necessarily the show we have any intention of making. So throughout the team's process, we will do workshop showings, and those more than anything force us to make decisions, because we try never to present a workshop that's longer than 90 minutes, just because that's, it's hard to sit through if it's unformed, and of course it's going to be unformed at that stage. So we do these series of workshop showings, and we may do up to 5 of them for a given process, and sometimes and get feedback from the audience. And I tend to be pretty fascist about the type of feedback that I'm willing to accept at certain points, particularly early on. We're so not interested in whether something is clear early on. We know how to, and we've gotten better at this as we've gotten older, but we know how to tell a story arc-ish. So at least at that stage, it's not like, oh, are you following the character's through line? It's what ideas feel loaded, what images really seared onto your eyeballs. So it's very sensory in the early stages. And then later, as we begin to really refine, so I just left Southwest Virginia for residency at Virginia Tech, and we are very far along into the process for this new show we're making with the National Theatre of Scotland. That'll premiere at the EIF. And there we were able to do like a full reading of the script, and actually were able to ask questions about character arc and what information did you feel you were missing about a character, and also what images in the text. This was a reading, so it was less physical than sometimes our other workshops might be. But what images in the text are searing your brain. Yeah.
Cool. And is that then the last phase, or is it there's a
so
third
then
one? Yeah.
the team, and it took us many years actually to get to this, was we realized it was incredibly helpful if we rehearsed, which is like so stupid. But I think actually because as we have all matured, we all began having processes outside the team, and so we could go, oh, wait a minute, there's this whole moment of refining and deepening and owning. And of course the team is as an entity, we pathologically rewrite things and revise things in a way that no freelance writer I ever work with does, to like profound degrees of removing entire characters and shifting whole storylines. But we now do try to carve a period that we say, okay, this is rehearsal, and it is about activating that part of your brain as much as the writer part of your brain. And that's a very different, this is actually kind of discovering this over the past few years has been really profound for the team's process, because we realized there were many problems that are actor or directorial problems that we were trying to solve as writers. And so you can end up with a text that is doing more work to be clear than actually would be interesting, or that even any of us individually as artists would respond to. Because most of us in the team tend to be moved by the more poetic, the more jagged, the more mysterious works of art. That gives space for a lot. I mean, us all being together is like the core answer. That we have been able to afford to get everyone together, that we have enough interns or assistants to transcribe, that on a given day most people are in a good mood versus a bad mood, and that either we're early enough in the process that people are still going, how do I find my way in this? Or we're late enough in the process that people have found what's moving them and making them fight for material and fight for a given theme. Because if people aren't passionate about getting into it in that way, then the work is just, it's brutal on a given day.